So the video today that we're going to do, the top 5 things that you need to be good at if you're going to be a good live scope fisherman. Am I the best live scope fisherman? Probably not. I feel like I can handle my own. I feel like I've spent as much time as anybody messing with it. But what kind of got me to this is I've had a few people in my boat the last few weeks, and you think that, you know, I think that I put a guy up there and he's going to be able to catch the same, you know, do the same things, and it just, sometimes it doesn't happen. Now, I want to tell you this, I've had some guys in my boat that's really, really good too. So, but anyway, top 5 things that you have to be able to do. Number 1 is be an accurate caster. You know, that we've always talked about that. You know, to be able to flip boat docks and stuff like that, you got to be an accurate caster, and absolutely you do. And I don't know that it's more important, that it may be more important in live scope than it is just flipping docks or throwing a spinnerbait or whatever. You know, the fact that your boat, this is my boat, first one I ever fished out of. This is your boat. This is, we'll call this the fish here. The fact that I would guess that 50% of the time, when I see that bass, he's stationary, which means he's sitting still and I'm going to be able to cast to him. It's pretty easy to be able to hit that target. All right, but the other 50% of the time, those fish are moving. All right, and you got to know, you know, you got to be able to look at live scope, be able to tell which way they're going, and honestly, be able to lead them and be able to drop that bait. You got a moving target, 10 to 20 to 40 foot deep. You got to be able to land that bait in front of him and be able to tee him off. These that are stationary, that's not that hard, okay? But these that are swimming are a little bit harder. So this is how I do it. You know, I keep my live scope at 80, all right? If we go to St. Clair or somewhere like that where it's just a parking lot, I'll move it to 100 or 120. It's not that I keep it at 80 because that's as far as it sees. I'm afraid that if I kept it on 120, I would just spend the whole day like, because I'm going to see, I'll be throwing over here, then I'll be throwing over there. I keep it 80 because 80 is a comfortable cast, and that's what I deal best with. So mine's set at 80, all right? When I see that fish, I don't think, for some reason, I don't think of it as in feet. I think of it, the easy way for me to do it is boat lengths. Almost everybody's boat's 20 foot long. So I know about what my boat length is. So whenever I see it, say, you know, it's at 40, it's like, all right, it's 2 boat lengths. And it's just, I mean, it's pretty easy whenever I put it in that. And I can typically always hit right where I need to be at. The thing about it is if you miss, you want to miss long. That way, you know, whenever I see my bait splash on the top of the water, if I miss long, I can bring it and drop it down to him. If you're short, obviously you got to be able to come in and make another cast. One thing I do not want to do is let that fish see my bait and not drop it in his house. If he's sitting here, I don't want to be short 8 feet and him be sitting in that brush pile and him watch that bait go down, because I've already ruined the element of surprise. I want to drop that bait just like flipping. That's why flipping's been so effective for 100 years, is because it's a reaction bite. I want to drop it right on his head. So the number 1 thing is be an accurate caster. Know, like one of the things I used to do when I went out there is I'd come up to a buoy or a dock, and I still do it. Like I try to guess how far it is. When I see that buoy, I'm like, all right, that's 60 feet, and I pan, and then I know what a 60-foot cast is, or a 3 boat length, or a 4 boat length, or a 1 boat length. All right, number one thing, be an accurate caster. Number two, to understand your settings. It's not hard. It's really, when I say that, it's not hard. Garmin, and I talk at Garmin because that's what I use. It's really limited. I mean, you can honestly put your units on default, and it's good. All right, now there's a few things based on the circumstances and the conditions I may change. Gain is one that I'm always playing with, because not only is every lake different, every creek arm, every bank bottom composition may be different. So I may play with that throughout the day. The range, I really don't play with. I set it on 80. The depth, I keep it, 10 to 15 feet deeper than what I'm basically fishing. And the shallower that you get, the better the picture is. What I'm saying is 80 versus 40 or 30, you're going to be a lot crisper and be able to see stuff a lot better in 30 than you will 80, even though you can still see it great at 80. So understand those, understand your settings, understand what you're looking at. Just recently I found a truck in the water and called the police department and stuff. It was all towed out. When I saw the truck, I pretty much knew what it was. All right. So I mean, like you can get the length, the height of it, everything. Know what you're looking at as far as trees, fish, all that kind of stuff. And when I say that, I'm not saying, if you put a 2-pound crappie and a 2-pound bass side by side, that I can tell you which one's which. I can't. I can tell you how they react to my bait and how they set up and cover to differentiate between the two, but side by side I can't tell. Understanding and kind of what you're working with and you're dealing with on the water. And so I was a school teacher, coach before this, and I'm a hands-on kind of person. So if you're using Livescope, this is our boat. Okay, this is your beam angle. All right, it's 20 degrees, and I don't know what, that's 45, so this is about 20. That's your beam angle. All right, so that's what you're looking at when it's like that. It's not square, it's not a perfectly, it's just, that's your beam angle. So the closer to the boat it is, the narrower it's going to be. I mean, you get way out there, 100 feet or 80 feet, since you're 20 degrees, your beam angle's carrying, so you're wider. Okay? All right, so we're going to take that away. We're going to use the old push pole, and we're going to pretend that our boat's on that end of the table, and this is our beam angle. I know you guys that use Livescope, which is almost everybody now. You're going to understand what I think you're going to understand what I'm saying. When I see a fish out there, that fish is going to look different. All right, say my trolling motor's not moving, and I just, boom, I look out there and I see a dot, okay, a floater. I don't cast when I see that floater, all right? What I do is when I see it, I move my trolling motor. Because what'll happen is you may move it to the right, and that signal, that return on that fish may get stronger. It may get brighter. So when I do that, if I move to the right, then I know that it's the strongest. All right, let me little hands on here. What I'm saying is, if I shine first, this is our fish. He may be on the edge of the beam. Okay, so he may be faint. You still see him, but he may be faint. So if I look and I see him and I cast directly in front, look, at 80 feet, my cones want to run off. At 80 feet, I'm missing. And I'm missing by 10 feet. So that's why whenever I see it, you know, I move it and get him zoned in. If he's dead center of your beam, or if he's close to the center, you're going to see that real beautiful, dark, or I should say bright, well, it depends on the color palette you use, but that really, really bright return. All right, and then that's when I know I'm honed right in. But also, another reason that I move it is to know that once I get locked in and my trolling motor is sitting there, if it starts getting faint, then one of two things is happening. One is he's moving, or two, my boat is moving. All right, so that kind of comes into play on that. So just remember that the strong signals, or I should say the weak signals, the faint ones, can come from the edge of the beam. Also, I've learned this, is a weak signal will be that fish swimming away from you. I don't know why, but I believe that the signal is not as strong if he's going away. You know, if you understand the brightness of your picture, it's easy to put that fish right in the center of your cone. You know, and here's another thing. You know, say our fish is in the center, you know, it's windy or whatever. You make that cast with your bait, and your bait is faint. You know, you see your bait coming, but the fish doesn't react. The fish is bright, your bait's not. Chances are you missed that fish. I mean, if you're on Table Rock and there's 15-foot visibility, you're probably still going to catch him. So that's one of the things, like if I cast, he's bright, my bait's bright, then, you know, you ought to catch him. I mean, you ought to at least get him to react. So that's one of the things. It's kind of like the old aircraft pilot, you know, with the radar. Both of these things have to line up to be able to get it. So anyway, just know your beam, know what it returns. And it's the same way, not only with the fish, but like a tree or a brush pile. Like if you go and it's not really, you're like, man, that brush is not that thick and it's not that good a return. And then you turn it a little bit and all of a sudden it's just like boom. Then you know directly in front of your arrow, if everything's lined up, that brush pile is directly above you. And then it can also change based on how far you are. Okay? You know, just one quick one is, you know, everybody's like, well, you know, Livescope's changed everything. You can't give a dude that's never been fishing Livescope. You still have to understand fish behavior and seasonal patterns to know where you're looking at. If you take a guy that's not been fishing, doesn't know anything, you get him Livescope, teach him Livescope, he's liable to go out, you know, when the fish are on the bank and be in the center of the lake. You still have to understand where these fish are probably going to be at to be a good Livescoper. Last but not least, and the most important, I'm going to say it again, be an accurate caster. You've got to be, when that quail's flying, you got to be able, I mean, boom, right there. Thanks for riding along.